I finally brought the Tier 8 Dutch cruiser Johan De Witt into its final form, and by that I mean the ship is now fully upgraded. Last time I featured it, all I had was the airstrike upgrade, but now I've got the hull upgrade and the main battery upgrade. So we have 47,280 HP compared to the unupgraded 43,000 HP. And on the main battery guns, our range is 18.2 kilometers. This was the first battle I played in the fully upgraded Johan De Witt, and it also happened to be the highest damage I've yet achieved with the ship. I want to talk to you today because I have some more thoughts on this thing. Last time I featured it, I was kind of indicating that I thought it might be overpowered. Nothing has really changed about that opinion. In fact, I've solidified that opinion. Johan De Witt is probably one of the strongest ships, one of the strongest cruisers, at least at Tier 8 right now. But before we really get into everything, I should remind you about the commander build. We're using Johan Fürstner. He's the reward for the ongoing calendar event, and in his third row of skills, he's got Risk Theory. This skill, I was indicating last time I talked about this guy, I think Risk Theory is overpowered. Or at least that's what I was getting at when I was discussing it the last time. My opinion on the subject has not changed. In fact, it's solidified. Risk Theory is an overpowered skill, particularly when you combine it with André Lemonnier, French cruiser commander, as one inspiration. Of course, Lemonnier, Lemon, as we call him in the business, is a free-to-play commander, and I assume, while Fürstner is a reward for the ongoing calendar event, that eventually, as time goes on, he'll also become a free-to-play commander. Wargaming has not confirmed that. I didn't get that from anywhere except my own speculations, so don't hold me to that, because I could very well be wrong. In any case, I don't think this build is going to be unachievable by the wider player base. And what it does is allow us to go dark very quickly. We fired our main battery guns, and before they're even reloaded, we're dark to the main. Of course, he still hits us because he shot when we were spotted. But the implications of being able to go dark that quickly, well, we'll see some of them play out as this battle goes on. But as a reminder, what Risk Theory does, among some other things, it reduces the time it takes for the cruiser's detectability to go down to normal after firing the main battery guns by 30%. So any ship in World of Warships Legends, whether it's a destroyer, a cruiser, or a battleship, every time they fire their main battery guns, they are subject to a concealment penalty. In the case of Johan De Witt, we have 9.5 kilometer detectability by sea, which is absurdly good, in my opinion. We achieve that concealment using the concealment mod and Gunichi Mikawa as the second inspiration for Fürstner, along with Lemonnier. Every time we fire our main battery guns, our concealment goes from 9.5 to 18.2 kilometers, matching our main battery gun range. And by the default rules of the game, it should stay at 18.2 kilometers for a full 20 seconds after firing. But because of Risk Theory and Lemonnier as one inspiration, we actually go dark in 9.75 seconds. That is going to make it a little bit tricky for the ships fighting us, and we're going to see some examples of that later on in the game. That alone is in and of itself, I think, overpowered. But that has more to do with the commander than it does the ship. And, you know, some people may not complete the calendar event. Some people may not have access to this commander right away. So they may be thinking, well, without the commander, the ship is not all that overpowered. I think I beg to differ, though. I haven't really come to a firm conclusion on this yet. But the second problem I see with the Johan De Witt in particular, and this probably applies, well, this certainly applies to the Howden Lu, and it may apply to the other ships in the line as well. I'm not 100% sure. I only have, at this point, extensive experience playing the Johan De Witt and the Howden Lu. I haven't really extensively played any of the lower tier ships yet. I'll get to that eventually. But for now, this mostly will apply to the Johan De Witt and the highest tier ships of this sort of line. Anyway, the airstrikes here are very potent. I don't think we've dropped one yet, but don't worry, that's coming soon. We should take a look at the minimap to set up the next sequence of this battle, because things are going south for the blue team right off the bat. We've lost one of our 2 friendly destroyers to the enemy Lucian inside of the Alpha Cap early on, and all 3 of the enemy's battleships are pushing the Alpha flank. We're really the only ship in this area of the map, so we can't really stick to the Alpha flank right now. We're going to have to kite away from it because there's no way we can just go toe-to-toe with a Xarkun first, a Yamato, and a main. If we're focused down by all 3 of those enemy battleships, we're going to be headed back to port very quickly. So we're going to have to head closer to our team. But the enemy has secured the Alpha Cap. They've also secured Charlie. So the hope here is that we'll be able to kite away from these battleships, deal damage as they chase us, and then our team on the other side of the map, not having to worry about the battleship's firepower, will be able to eliminate the cruisers and potentially the destroyer that are playing around the Charlie Cap, and then take the Charlie Cap. Lucian is about to go down, so that'll make some things easier, but we've still got 1 enemy destroyer left alive, and we've got the GK and the Yamato hot on our tails. The GK is within our detectability range, but luckily the island is blocking his line of sight, so we want to increase the distance until he's outside of 9.5 kilometers, then maybe we can slow down a little bit. We're going to send the first airstrike of the battle his way, or maybe this is the second, but no, we've sent a couple already. This is going to be the first big hit. We get several thousand points of damage and a double fire right off the bat, which I assume the GK is promptly going to extinguish, but then we're going to turn at the main. We know he just shot his guns, or at least I think he did, so we should go dark before we take any return fire from him. Of course, we're going to get hit by the Lucian's torpedoes. That just goes to show you don't sail in a straight line at a constant speed when you know you've got a destroyer on your broadside, even if that destroyer goes down. Torpedoes take a little time to reach you. So now we're in hard mode, thanks to the Lucian and thanks to our own inattentiveness. Also, worse than that, we're being perma-spotted by the enemy Shimakaze inside of the Delta Cap. And here, in this little sequence, is an example of the risk theory skill and Lemonnier working together to provide us an overpowered advantage. We shot our main battery, and we go dark right now, just as the Shimakaze smokes up. You might think we're going dark because the Shima smoked up, but no, it's because of the bonus we get from risk theory and Lemonnier. If we were still subject to the same 20-second firing penalty, we would have still been spotted by the enemy Yamato behind us after the Shima had smoked up. And theoretically, that would have given the GK, the Yamato, and the main a better chance at actually hitting us again. We don't have a lot of HP left either, only 12,613, and we've got an overmatchable stern by, I think, all 3 of them. So it's not a stretch to imagine that they could essentially one-shot us at this point. But because of that risk theory skill, they are not able to keep line of sight on us, and so therefore they're not able to shoot at us. The implications for that are many, but basically it means you get much more control over the terms of an engagement than any other cruiser would. And in situations like this, where you're on low HP, you can perhaps afford to be a little riskier. We're going to take an AP shot at this defense's broadside. It doesn't get the citadels that we wanted, and we also drop the Yamato with some airstrikes, but we go dark. The enemy ships do shoot at us. A couple of them hit before we go dark, but the 3rd enemy battleship out there, the main, he's not really able to shoot at us because we're unspotted before he can even aim his guns this way. Keep that in mind as this goes on. We'll see another good example of that. And I think that is potentially a problem, a very overpowered problem. But on top of that, we're also able to launch these airstrikes from stealth. And as you can see, the reticle is so huge that these enemy battleships, they don't really seem to have a good way of avoiding it. Now, to be fair, I'm not in their shoes. I don't know how much they're trying to avoid it, and if I were in their shoes, I certainly would not be pushing into the enemy spawn in pursuit of a kiting cruiser. That's a losing proposition for you if you're in a battleship. But the problem here is really these airstrikes. GK goes down for our first kill of the game. We also get the Arsonist medal to go along with our Witherer and High Caliber. Maine has wisely chosen to disengage from this flank. He's recognized that pursuing us is going to be fruitless. Yamato hasn't quite got the memo yet, and he is going to receive a little bit of pain, or actually a lot of pain, for his decisions here. We're a couple seconds away from another airstrike being ready to go. As you can see, every time we zoom in on the binoculars, the game provides us with a lead that essentially works to hit the battleship as long as it continues sailing the same course and speed. And there really doesn't seem to be much leeway for these battleships to dodge. Now, you might say that that's not too much of a problem. After all, look at the cruiser right next to you, Xarkun. It is a Pan-Asian cruiser that can launch torpedoes from stealth. And it can launch a lot of torpedoes. It's either Jinan or Sejong. You can see how many it's putting in the water, and it's going to use its reload booster and put even more in the water. But there's a difference between these airstrikes and torpedoes, a major one, in fact. You see that first set of torps launched by the Pan-Asian cruiser, they didn't have enough lead, and so Yamato is going to be able to pass them by harmlessly. The second set, he's not going to be so lucky. But at the same time, he's not doing anything to mitigate the risk of being hit by torpedoes. He could very easily turn his rudder one way or the other. He could change his speed. There are ways to avoid these torpedoes, because when a ship like the Sejong or Jinan launches a spread of torpedoes like this, well, in this case, they have to travel about 12 kilometers before they actually hit the target. It takes them probably about 60 seconds to get there, and that's a lot of time for the battleship to change what it's doing in order to avoid the torpedoes. So there's a much larger degree of counterplay against these torpedoes than there is against the airstrikes. Relative to the torpedoes, the airstrikes reach the target instantly. It takes about 12 seconds, and as we've already seen, the reticle is so huge that it doesn't leave much room for battleships to avoid them. Even cruisers will have a hard time. We'll see an airstrike against the defense a little bit later on. But this combination of being able to launch these airstrikes from stealth and having this risk theory skill and the ability to dictate the terms of the engagement in a way that other cruisers simply can't, I think it makes a pretty overpowered combination. And I'm not really sure what the solution is, but if you still don't believe that the risk theory and the Lemonnier combination is overpowered, take a look at this sequence here. We fire at the main, we light one single fire on him, we go dark, he shoots at us. He didn't have enough time to point his guns this way to actually get a shot at us when we were spotted, though. And because it took him so long, in scare quotes, to turn his guns this way and shoot, he wasn't locked on, so all his shells hit the island. Any other cruiser, we would have remained spotted by the defense over there, and the main would have been able to lob his shells over the island, potentially hit us, and potentially sink us, which very well could determine the outcome of this game. It's very close. The enemy team is ahead of us by about 200 points, but we have the same amount of caps as the enemy team, and so all we have to do is stay alive and sink the main and the defense, and that is going to secure us the victory. In fact, that's exactly what we're going to do. So as this game winds down to a very close, rather nail-biting conclusion, I ask you, the audience, what do you think of my thoughts on the ship? I think there's no question that the risk theory skill is overpowered and probably needs to be nerfed in some way. And I know not everybody has been able to play with this commander. Probably only the community contributors have at this point. And our experience or opinion may not be representative of the entire player base, but I think I'm being objective and fair in my analysis here. This ability to go dark so quickly just gives you far too much control over the engagement and lets you get away with things that other cruisers simply couldn't. And then these airstrikes are just too effective at dealing essentially uncounterable damage from stealth. Even that defense couldn't avoid the airstrike. It got him for about 5k, and then the friendly defense was able to finish him off to secure the victory here. We end the battle with 244,000 damage done, 3 kills, the high caliber, a witherer, and an arsonist. I saw when these ships were first released that people were saying, I think in the official World of Warships Legends Discord server, that somehow these things were not good damage farmers. I beg to differ. This was some pretty incredible damage farming. Granted, we got all the ingredients for that, kiting away on a flank with 3 high HP battleships pushing into us, so not too difficult to farm a lot of damage under those circumstances. But these airstrikes, I think either the time it takes for them to hit the target or the reticle, one of those two things probably needs to be reduced. And the 30% bonus that Risk Theory gives you, likewise, I think needs to be reduced. Probably pretty extremely. But let me know what you think in the comments. Give the video a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye.